just sat down to draw the lines drawings to the TotalBoat Dory that we're just about to build. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is draw a baseline with my drafting machine, and I'm going to show you all the tools right after I do these two things right here. Then I'm going to put a vertical line on my drawing board. This is going to represent amidships on the boat as well as the center line in the body plan. So now I want to make it a little bit taller. So I'm going to move up and just do it a little bit taller, like so. Now, before I get started drawing, I just kind of like to show you all the tools that I'm going to use to accomplish this drawing with. In the first place, the drawing board is a tool in itself because you just need a nice flat surface like this to get going on. And then you might say the paper's even a tool really, but then the first tool is this drafting machine. It's just like a little straight edge that you can slide up and down and it stays perfectly straight across because it's got a little mechanism of strings under the table. It's a very, very simple machine, but this thing is really necessary in order to produce drawings like this, I think. So then I've got a tri-square you saw me using. This one's 90 degrees on this corner, 45 and 45. I mean, I like this one because it's fairly large, so I can do these kind of things with it pretty easily. And the next thing I want to show you is this little tiny one right here that I use quite a bit because it's off color. It's very easy to line it up with pencil lines or dots that are already there. For some reason, this was an easier thing to use than a clear one. So I use this a little bit. And the next thing I'd like to show you is this little protractor. I use this to take angles, or if I want something like the dead rise to be 25 degrees, I'll set it with this. And then, you know, I draw along here, I put a dot here and a little line up here, and then I can just connect that up. So that's what I use that for. It's a very simple one, and it's lightweight. It's got this swinging arm on it. It's pretty interesting. I like it, so I've always used that thing. And then this is your scale rule right here. Now, this particular drawing really is the first drawing I've ever drawn at 1.5 inches to the foot. So this is going to be drawn a little bit bigger than I've drawn some other drawings, and I think it makes it a lot bit easier, really, because your accuracy is much simpler to obtain. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use this scale rule. Now, I can't use this everywhere because sometimes there's tools out there and different things. So in order to transfer measurements on the drawing that I'm going to do, I use a pair of dividers. Now, this is a little pair of dividers that used to have an adjustment on it, but it's been broken. But I can just move it by hand very easily and set it at a dimension and transfer it to the other view. And it works really nicely for me. I bent the ends so they're coming right straight down into paper. And then sometimes I use this pair of dividers because it seems to work better really up close, like dimensions like this. Very small dimensions, because it's got this little adjustment wheel on it right here. So I've been using this a little bit. And this is my little pair of dividers here with a pencil in it. I can draw sweeps on the board with this, and this thing works out well. You don't need anything really much more expensive than that. That thing works pretty good, just like that. I've got an eraser because I have to have one. I haven't been able to get around having to have one of those. And then I've got a French curve right here that I use on the very, very few occasions I was using it to draw the stem, the curvature of the stem on this particular boat, or I'm going to. So there you go. I'm using that, and this is a little eraser shield that I use once in a while because you can just cover a line and erase right down that little slot and you get the line and nothing else. That thing works pretty good. And I've got my little pencil sharpener here, which is nothing but a very sharp block plane, and that's all I need. And then it comes to the most important tool, which would be the pencil itself. Now, you could use a pencil that's even harder than this, but I've got a 5/8, so it's harder than a 3. And I don't want it to be too hard because I'm trying to leave a little bit of a line for the camera to see it. So that's the pencil that I'm going to use right there. And I think in this, so that it doesn't leave much of a line, this is a 7/8 in here. So I've got a couple different pencils, and these are my spline weights. Now, spline weights are used to hold down battens, flexible battens like like this one right here. Now this is plastic that I've been using, and it's been working really well for me. And I made these spline weights, I would tell you, probably when I was 14 years old or so, something like that. You know, I was a young kid and I had to have spline weights. I don't know, you know, because I was playing around drawing boats and different things. And I wasn't very good at it, I'd tell you that, but I don't know. I like it nowadays much more, and it's been fun. So those are spline weights that I designed. I even have the little wooden mold right here that I carved out to push in the sand when I cast these things in the sand with lead, you know. So that's that. And then I've got a couple of production little spline weights right here that I've used, and they don't have a hook on them, but you don't really need it. You can just push it up against the side of the thing or weight it down. And sometimes I use these things up on top of there like so, you know, so then I can move it back and forth. So spline weights are for drawing nice curves with your batten, and that is pretty much it. And then I have to have a brush because I need to clean the board once in a while, and you can't do it with your hands because you smudge in like eraser marks, you know, that you've erased. If you erase mistakes, that's like dirty right there. You need to just brush it away. So we use a little brush, and that is pretty much it right there. I'm just starting to lay down the lines of the TotalBoat Sport Dory that we're going to build here in the shop. Now, it's a process that goes on the drawing board that's really quite a bit of fun. I haven't done a lot of it lately. I used to do quite a bit of it years ago. So this is really going to be fun for me. Now, the first thing we do is put a grid on the board here to work with, and then we're going to lay down some dimensions that we just came up with. Like, I want the boat to be 14 feet long, so we're going to lay down the length of the boat and then the beam of the boat. And then what we're going to do basically is start working the body plan, which is the top view. And then we're going to be shifting back and forth from one view to the next, transferring measurements back and forth. And we don't even know what those measurements are exactly because we're just picking them up with a pair of dividers and moving them around the board a little bit. And we're out to generate these nice long curves in the other views that we can fare with a batten and the spline weights. So we draw those views in, and then we fare the shape in the other views. And what we've done here is drawn a three-dimensional shape, and we've done it on the planking lines. We've used the planking lines of the boat to fare the shape. Now, it's happened pretty quickly, actually, because I've got the system worked out pretty well for these kinds of shapes. And I'd like to talk to you some more about that later on. And I'm doing it really with no mathematics whatsoever. I'm just transferring lengths. I don't even know what they are. I hardly use the scale rule. Once in a while, I'll use a scale rule, but scale rules don't maneuver around the table here very good. You have to move every tool on the table to lay the thing down. So I've got my methodology that I use, and it's working out pretty good for me. So this boat will be easy to build. I don't think it's going to require really any lofting to build it. All I really need to do is blow up the sectional drawing, make the sections, and start right there. So here it is right here, the TotalBoat Sport Dory. It's going to have a different type of rudder than most boats like this have. It's not going to have a rudder that's going to swing on the pintos and gudgeons right on the transom like this, because when you swing it, it kind of puts the brakes on a boat like this. I never cared for that, or all the linkages that hold them together and different ways of steering it. Never cared for that, or the big giant long tiller. What we're going to do is we're going to put a hole right through the transom, right about here. In this view, it would be right about there. And what's going to happen is we're going to put a flexible well connected to the transom on the inside. It's going to extend up to about here, and we're just going to be able to take an oar, the same oar that we row the boat with, and push it down through that little flexible well like that. And whether or not you tie it on there or not, it really doesn't matter. But when you turn the oar, the well will turn with it. The well is just a flexible thing. We used to actually use a fishing boot upside down and connected to the transom, and it worked fantastic. So I've already experienced this, and this is the way to go in a dory, having a rudder like that. Not only is it not over the lee side, because most of these boats sailed way better if you used an oar over the lee side, but it's a little tricky to reach it because you're trying to be on the windward side. So even though it sailed well, you got your weight in the wrong spot. So this oar right here, or this rudder, the tiller, is going to be amidships when you sail it, right in the middle of the boat. It's going to be very easy to reach it, It's going to be easy to use it for some other purpose. You don't really have to stow it or put it away like you would a normal rudder. So it's a really nice feature, I think, right there. It's also going to have in the boat a little well in it right here, just ahead of that right there. And that little well is going to be so that you can put a little tiny outboard motor or possibly an electric drive in it right in here. And your rowing seat is going to be up in here like this. So you got plenty of room between the rowing seat, you know, and your little outboard well like that. And like I said, when you want to row the boat, you just pull the oar out, you use it to row the boat with, one of the oars to row the boat with. And then it's actually going to have another rowing seat up forward up here, and then a little dagger board trunk just after that seat. And it's going to have like an articulating dagger board in that well right there. So that's going to make the boat sail considerably better than it would. It's going to have a very simple rig in it, and it's going to be actually stayed. I don't like the idea of putting an unstayed rig in a boat like this because I don't think they're structurally capable of holding one properly, you know. So what I do is I'm going to have a shrouded rig. It's going to have 2 shrouds and then a little head stay, and the whole rig comes down at once and rolls itself up, and you can stow it. So it's going to be pretty nice. And the other thing that we're actually going to do is somewhere probably in this well right back here where the outboard motor is going to be, we're going to put a little receptacle or a little area that you can put a viewing box down in there with a cell phone in the bottom of it. So the cell phone, it'll be even with the bottom right here, or even protruding a little bit, and then we'll run a wire up to like a, you know, an iPad or something like that, so you'll be able to view the bottom as you're rowing. And I think that would be a really nice feature, because there's nothing more fun than watching the bottom, and while you're rowing, it's pretty difficult because you can't lean over the side. So pretty neat thing. So we're going to be able to power the boat. We're going to be able to sail the boat really effectively and very, very fast. It's going to have a very moderate little rig in it. It's going to roll like a dream. The sport that I like doing with a boat like this is sailing in really lumpy water, real lumpy water. So I'm anxious to get the boat built so that I can get using the thing myself. Now I wanted to show you some other things here in the profile view. Now, we generated some of these points before we started working on the profile view. Just by knowing how wide we wanted the boat, we put that into the profile view as well as in the half-breadth view. And then the height from the baseline, we also knew how high we wanted to make it, so we put that in this view and also in the profile view. So these are kind of predetermined points. We knew how high we wanted the stem to be. The other thing we knew is how wide the bottom was going to be and where it terminated at the stem and how much rocker. So we drew these things in very much first. Then the next line we actually drew in was this line right here, because this line is the end of the dead rise right here. So we put this line in the other views first as well, and we also predetermined that we wanted it to have a 25-degree dead rise right in here, which it has, and then it shifts from there into planks that are within a radius. So I'm going to show you this now. This is the center right here of number 3, which is the center frame in the boat. You see that distance right there? That's the same distance as it is right here. It's the same as here and the same as here. So that's number 3. I would say 3, 4 on that. It doesn't say 4 that, but it hits 4 points. So 3 planks are within a radius. Now let me swing down a little bit further. Let me center this up again. See, here they are hitting, and then it falls away. So the planks down below here, like this, you know, are outside of that radius. These are in dead rise outside the radius. These are all within the radius. So also, the other thing I'd like to show you is 1/3 of this distance right here is, if you divide this radius, and again up here, this is 1/3 of the distance right here where the radius runs out. So this is 2/3 of the distance, but it's not, it's divided in 3. So it's 2 parts of the distance, but we divided it in 3. So what we've done now is we divided this, right in this plan. We set the radius the way we wanted it. We divided this along the radius like this to get these all even like that. And then we divided up forward we divided on this line right here, I divided that in 3 equal parts right there. And then I simply drew straight lines right through there. These would be the planking lines as viewed right from the very forward end of the boat. And they're straight in this view. They have no curvature whatsoever. It makes it much easier when you go to draw the lines in the other views because it's already straightened out, at least to some degree. And like I said, this boat is not lofted on water lines that go straight across, or buttock lines that go vertical, or some kind of a predetermined diagonal line. Sometimes a boat's got 2 or 3 diagonal lines within it. This boat is drawn on the planking lines. So these planking lines represent the inside of the boat, the very corners of the stations that you would build the boat around, or the dory frames that you would cut to this shape to bend the planking around. Now we're going to make a mold to build it, and there's a few other things that are going to be a little bit different than a lot of dory building, but basically this is how you generate a 3-dimensional shape on a board the way I've done it right here with a very few measurements. You know, all I've done is use the board and transferred measurements from one view to the other until I was satisfied, and then you've come up with this shape. And this is the most important view to me at this point, because the other views are fair, but I don't really need them. What I need is this view right here. This is the very center of the boat right here, the biggest frame section, and they taper down forward as you go. And then this is the center again over here, and they taper down aft, and this is the transom right here. So I'm going to set sections up like that to build the boat around, and we get started. That's how we get started right there. But before we do get started building, we're going to have to purchase the lumber. Howdy, partner. Now, this is a great opportunity to go out and have a really good time. How are you this morning? I'm out here with my friend Will Palaquin at his mill in Exeter, Rhode Island, and we're looking at Atlantic white cedar today.
All right, that one was like a banana.
I see that one. I was down.
That's an 8-foot log.
Yeah.
We got a little bit of a defect on that
see it.
side.
I know
how the other side would be.
Yeah. Right now we're looking around the yard at all kinds of different things, some white pine logs, and discussing all kinds of stuff that we might do in the future. But we have a cedar log picked out already. And it's sitting right up on the mill right now. The only thing we haven't done is gotten together and looked at the log, because we're going to want to make some decisions about how we want to spin it and just exactly how we're going to saw it and get the best use out of it.
This is important right now.
That's right.
All right. But I want you to tell me, you look it over good.
Yeah.
And tell me if you want me to turn it one way or the other.
Yeah,
there is a little check on it.
That's all right.
If we work on it this way, you know, we're going to be up here and down here with our flitches, okay?
So you got the widest part on this side. So you think to keep it that way?
Well, we got the crack right in the middle, okay? So you tell me what
you know. Something it's so straight, I don't think I can make a huge decision on it. You know what I mean? Because it's so straight. If the thing had a sweep to it, I would tell you to lay it down like a banana. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I mean, I think you're right. Just like this. Doing right now is measuring up to the center of the tree, because I think he's going to block this end of it up until we're going to shim it up so that when we start sawing, it'll take wedges right off of it. You know, he's got a certain way that he wants this to sit on the mill, and so we just flapped it up there for right now. Now we're going to block it up a little bit before we make the first couple of cuts. So the purpose of these first 2 cuts is to get the cut parallel to that side of the log, that same side of the log that you're making the cut on. And basically what I buy from Will is Atlantic white cedar. Now this is the right material right here for planking a boat like this. Northern white cedar would be great, but I don't have a source for northern white cedar, so this is the right stuff right here, and I've been purchasing and using lumber sawn out of this mill for quite some time now. And I'm lucky to be able to purchase it at all, because northern white cedar is just getting incredibly hard for me to purchase, so this stuff meets the bill.
I need to know whether you want a full 1 inch or 7/8.
Well, you know something? Let me just look here. This is all slab sawn right here, so I just make that one 1 inch. So now we're going to make our first true cut. Now this is going to be a piece of lumber that we're going to keep. We're going to saw these pieces off just under 1 inch thick, because we don't have any reason to have any of the lumber for the 2 boats that we're going to build to be any thicker than that. So now we're about halfway down this cut, and we're proceeding along pretty slowly here because the cut is a little bit wider on one side than it is on the other side, and in the center of the log it doesn't have much tendency to wander, but over on one side of the log like this, it can wander if you get going along too fast. So the mill's controllable as far as how fast we want to push it along the cut. Now we can't adjust really the speed of the blade, but we can adjust the speed of the cut.
Just under 22.
Just under 22 feet. Now look at the broadness of the cut right here. I'm going to climb up on top of the log, and I'm going to take a shingle and I'm going to sweep all of this dust right off of it, because the mill deposits all the dust right on top of the cut and you don't really get a good look at it. So I don't want to be guessing. I'm going to climb up there and investigate really careful. And what we're looking for before we start running off pieces is to make sure that we've got the log shimmed properly and rotated properly to get the maximum amount of use and pieces out of this timber. Now we're cutting off the first pieces that are graded. That's why we've measured the length of it with the tape measure, and we've actually shortened up the measurement of the log a little bit. So I get a little bit of grace right there, and we're going to cut off pieces, and we're going to keep these pieces as we go right now. Most of the first pieces that we cut off here are kind of slab sawn. They have some grain on the edges of the pieces that are like 45 degrees. And these are great pieces for some particular use, but I try to use more quartered pieces or more vertical grain pieces, and they start to develop as we get going down in the cuts right here. And as soon as the blade reaches the other end of the log, Joe and I are able to just slide that piece of material off. But you can see they're not really, really light, even though it's lightweight wood. These are good sized pieces of wood right here. Very good sized pieces, 22 feet long, you know, by well over a foot width. So we have to try to get as much of the sawdust off of it as we can, because there's no need of carrying the sawdust home with us. Will allows us to leave it out here if we can get it off the plank. So it's going to be a touch bigger. And as we look at it, we'll notice that it's starting to get quartered on both sides. Now, it's not really quarter sawn, but it's called what you call center cut. It's a very simple system of sawing a log like this. You're sawing parallel to one side, flipping the log over, and then parallel on the other side, and leaving like a tapered piece in the middle of the log with what they call the pithing, or would be some imperfections at the very, very center of the tree. All right, we're just sawing off quite a few flitches here, and the boards are starting to come out very, very nice. This side of the log's got a little bit of a knot up in it in here, but it's pretty clear stuff. Now, a log like this and planks like this can be used for skiffs, because these are perfect skiff planks. They can also be used for dories. These are nice quarter sawn pieces on each side with the annual rings going right through it this way here. So, I mean, this is nice wood right here, and the mill's doing a great job. Will's very careful on how he saws these things. He's got that mill operate nice and slowly, and it's very sharp. It's coming out nice and straight. And I think at this point, Will's probably going to decide on shimming the log a little bit differently, but I'll talk it over with Will before he makes another cut. But here we are. These are Atlantic white cedar logs from Florida, and they're shipped up here and sawn up right here on the scene, and we get to saw it the way we want. This is great for me because not at the mercy of somebody else's sawing. You know, Will and I get to talk things over and make the right decisions, and look at this. This is fantastic. So on we go.
All right, we're going to just take one more off of here. Okay. And then we're going to turn the log and work the other side.
And re-shim it on the other side,
yep.
Right. And then so there'll be a wedge in the center that's going to have pith in the middle of it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so you're going to parallel to each side, basically.
Oh,
yeah, I got you. Okay, so one more cut, then we're going to flip the log over. Let her rip. Now, these next couple cuts will be the last couple cuts from this side, and they'll be the nicest material that we've sawn off yet, because it'll be the most quarter sawn or the most edge grained. What it'll have is like a center in it with quartered material on each side, and if I'm lucky, and by the looks of things I am, I'm going to be able to get 2 dory planks out of each one of these planks, one down each side. Look at the size of those things, with no slab sawn material in the boat whatsoever. You'll also notice that once in a while all of us step in and clean the ways of the railway system, because you can't allow it to build up with too much sawdust because it gets a little bit lumpy and your cuts don't come out quite as accurate. So we clean it off as often as we can. Now it's a pretty important time because you're going to want to get the log shimmed properly again on the other side. It's not going to shim out exactly the way it did on the first side. You want to parallel this cut, this next cut, to the other side of the log, and that way you just get the most amount of material that you can possibly get out of this piece. Will's really cranking them out now on this side because we're all shimmed out exactly the way we want to be, and we can just make repetitive cuts, one right after another, and we don't have to make any more really adjustments. The only thing we have to do now is determine how thick we're going to crank them off. So he looks at me and asks me if I want it to be an inch or an inch and a quarter or whatever it is, and I tell him, and he sets it up, and we take a quick peek at it to make sure it's coming out exactly right, and then run it right through. But each time we do, we check the boards as they come off to see if they're taking any kind of a set, or the log is taking a set or anything like that, and really nothing has happened. As long as nothing happens to that log and it stays nice and stiff on there, the cuts are going to come out nice and parallel, and the pieces are going to come out exactly the way I want them to come out. Now, this was a pretty nice log because what's going to happen here is I'm going to get a corded or an edge grain dory plank on each side of the center of each one of these cuts. Fantastic, really. So we're pretty happy so far, and we're whipping them right out, and we're getting towards the center of the log here. You can see now as we do get a little bit closer to the center, sometimes we start to lose a little bit of the length of the log, and that's okay because we don't need every piece to be as long as the pieces that we're sawing off. So, you know, there's different things we can do with this lumber in the center. Some of it's tapered now, and like I say, we've left all the taper in this log in the center of the log rather than on the two sides, and we get the best material out of it that way. So the last thing that Will's doing here is figuring the board footage in each piece, and he's being very, very fair about it. We're cutting a little bit off the length of some of the pieces and a little bit off the width, and you kind of go to the center of the length of the piece and measure across it. That's how you get your width. You don't measure it at one end or measure it at the other. You measure it at the center. You multiply the figures together, add it all up, and that's what I pay for right there. Now, you know, you could probably just measure the log itself right from the beginning and get a pretty accurate measurement of what's in it, but you never know for sure until it starts coming out of there. Well, Will, I really want to thank you for sawing this log up for me. I mean, look at the thing. It came out beautiful, and you just did a nice, neat job of it. All the boards come out the same thickness one end to the other. I just love it. I get the most out of it when you saw, above and beyond anyone else, so I'm really happy.
Well, thank you very much. We try to do a good job.
Well, you've done it. You've done it once again, and I'm going to be back for some more in no time flat. You know it. And we're going to saw that big oak log up there for corded pieces for that transom. So we'll be back in a day or two.
Yeah, you wanted those 2 1/4 inches, right?
2 1/4 inches. That's right. Yeah. Right. Don't sell those logs. You know those big logs down there? Is there anything in those logs that's any good?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, he says. This is the log that I picked, right?
That's the one you picked. There's another pretty one down there, but with basically only half of it's good. But
one side of it.
Yeah, I'd say one side of it. Yeah,
well, yeah, but that's okay because, you know,
it is.
yeah, I'm going to study this stuff beyond your wildest dreams and figure out what to do with it, you know. Okay. Dory planking is curved, like I said, you know. The skiff plank is nice and straight, so I have to pick it over and put it in different places, and oh my God, I couldn't be happier. Yes, sir. Thank you, Will. Thank you very much.
Betcha.